The phone rang 3 times before I answered it. I remember that, because I almost didn't pick up. I was sitting in my small kitchen, my hands shaking from the medicine, wondering if my own son even remembered my number anymore. My name is Daniel. I'm 78 years old. For most of my life, I built things, a small furniture workshop that I ran with my own 2 hands for almost 40 years. I built tables, chairs, cabinets. I built a home, and I built my son, Ryan, from nothing but love and long hours. When Ryan was young, I taught him everything. How to measure twice and cut once. How to shake a man's hand and mean it. How to work when nobody was watching. I thought I was building a good man. But 3 years ago, everything changed. My health started failing. My heart, then my knees, then my eyes. I stopped being able to work in the shop. And slowly, I stopped being useful to anyone, including, it seemed, my own son. That night on the phone, I finally worked up the courage to ask him for help. Not money, just help. A ride to the hospital for a checkup I couldn't drive myself to anymore. "I can't, Dad," he said, his voice flat, distracted, like he was already thinking about something else. "I'm busy. Figure it out yourself. Figure it out yourself." I sat there holding the phone long after he hung up. I looked around my kitchen, the same kitchen where I taught him to tie his shoes, where I helped him with homework by candlelight during a storm, where I sat up all night when he had a fever as a boy, and I realized something that broke me quietly, without a single tear. My son had become a stranger. But that phone call wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning, because what Ryan didn't know, what he had no way of knowing, was that his refusal that night would set something into motion, something slow, something quiet, something he never saw coming, not revenge born of anger, something else, something that would force him, 1 year later, to stand in my kitchen again and see exactly who he had become. This is the story of how a father, dismissed and forgotten, found a strength he didn't know he had left, and how karma, in its own quiet way, always finds its way home. After that night, I stopped calling Ryan, not out of anger, out of exhaustion. I was tired of being someone's burden. So I did what I always knew how to do. I figured it out myself. I called an old friend, Marcus, who I hadn't spoken to in years. We'd worked together back when the workshop was young, back when we were both broke and hungry and building something out of nothing. Marcus was retired now too, but sharp as ever. "Daniel," he said when he picked up. "It's been too long." I told him everything. The diagnosis, the hospital visit I needed, the call with Ryan. Marcus didn't say much at first, just listened. Then he said something I'll never forget. "A son who won't drive his father to the doctor," he said quietly, "isn't too busy. He's just decided you don't matter enough." It hurt to hear, but it was true, and I needed to hear it. Marcus drove me to my appointment himself, and in the weeks that followed, he did something else. He introduced me to a small woodworking class at the community center, mostly young men trying to learn a trade. They needed someone experienced, someone patient. I said yes. At first, it was just a distraction, but something happened in that workshop that I hadn't expected. These young men, hungry to learn, respectful, eager, treated me the way I used to imagine my own son would, once he grew up and understood what I'd given him. They called me Mr. Daniel. They listened when I spoke. They showed up. Meanwhile, Ryan's business, a real estate venture he'd poured everything into, was struggling. I heard about it through mutual friends, not from him. Turns out, the business partner he trusted most, a man named Colin, had been quietly moving money around, making decisions without Ryan's knowledge, setting him up to take the fall on a bad deal. I felt for him, I really did. Even after everything, he was still my son. But I also felt something else, a strange, sobering clarity. Ryan had spent years chasing success, telling himself he was too busy for his own father, while a man he called his closest partner was busy stripping him of everything he'd built. One evening, my phone rang. It was Ryan. "Dad," he said, and his voice sounded different this time, smaller. "Can we talk?" I didn't answer right away. Old habits, old wounds, don't disappear in a moment. But I remembered something I'd told the young men in my workshop just days before. A closed door doesn't mean the room is empty. Sometimes it just means someone needs the courage to knock properly. "Come by tomorrow," I said. "I'll be here." Ryan showed up the next afternoon, looking like a man who hadn't slept in days. He sat at my kitchen table, the same table where he once ignored my call for help, and for a long time, he didn't say anything at all. Finally, he spoke. "Colin cleaned me out, Dad. Forged signatures, took client funds. I trusted him with everything, and he destroyed it. I don't even have enough to cover the lawyer." I let him talk. I let it all come out. The shame, the fear, the disbelief that someone he trusted so completely could betray him so easily. When he finished, I said quietly, "Do you remember the night you told me to figure it out myself?" He looked down. "Dad, I'm not bringing it up to punish you," I said. "I'm bringing it up because I did figure it out. I built something new, with people who actually showed up, and now, here you are, betrayed by someone you trusted more than you trusted your own father. Maybe it's time you understood what that felt like, from both sides." I could see it land, not as an attack, but as truth. Here's what happened next. Not out of pity, but because I had spent a lifetime believing that even broken things deserve a chance to be rebuilt, I called Marcus. Between the two of us, and a lawyer we both knew from years back, we helped Ryan expose Colin's fraud with clean paperwork and old contacts neither of them expected me to still have. Colin was removed from the company, faced legal consequences, and lost every client relationship he'd built on lies. But the real turning point wasn't the exposure. It was smaller than that. It was Ryan showing up, every week after, not because he needed something from me, but because he wanted to be there. He drove me to appointments. He sat in the workshop and watched me teach, sometimes picking up a chisel himself, relearning things I'd taught him decades ago. One evening, months later, he looked at me and said, "I was so busy trying to prove I didn't need anyone. I forgot the one person who never needed anything from me, except my time." I didn't say much back. I just nodded, and we kept working, side by side, the same way we used to when he was a boy. Karma doesn't always come as punishment. Sometimes it comes as a mirror, showing a man exactly what he became, so he has the chance to become someone better. My son learned that lesson the hard way, but he learned it, and in the end, that mattered more than any revenge ever could.